I was once 6 weeks pregnant, but my mother-in-law said, "Get rid of it. If you want to marry my son, then don't let that bloodline exist." I used to think love would save me from a dull life. I naively believed that if I loved enough, loved sincerely, then every wound in this world could be healed. But life is nothing like the fairy tales I used to tell my little sister. Especially when you're 6 weeks pregnant, sitting in front of a woman who's smiling and says, either abort it or leave this family. My name is Maya Thompson. I'm 28 years old now. But the story I'm about to tell you started 3 years ago, when I was still a dreamy 25-year-old girl, believing I had found the man of my life. I loved him like there was no tomorrow. Daniel Carter. His name was as beautiful as a melody and just as easy to make me fall. We met while working on a charity campaign for disabled children in Los Angeles. He was tall, eloquent, a good listener, and always made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. I once wrote in my journal, "If this is destiny, then thank you, universe, for bringing him to me." We were deeply in love. Daniel often drove me to work in the old Jeep he said was a keepsake from his father. We cooked together, talked about the future, about weddings, about kids. I once believed Daniel was the last man I'd ever need in my life. Until the day I met his mother, the future mother-in-law, a beautiful mask. Veronica Carter, Daniel's mother, was a powerful, wealthy woman with an American royalty aura. She was the CEO of a famous real estate chain in California. She was beautiful, even in her 50s, and very skilled at making you feel like you were never enough. The first time we met, she looked me up and down like she was evaluating an item at an auction. I wore a modest white dress and brought a jar of homemade cookies as a gift. She looked at the jar and laughed. "Oh, how cute. You still bake like it's the 1950s?" I smiled, a little embarrassed. Daniel quietly held my hand under the table. I thought it was just the initial distance. But as it turned out, to her, I was never worthy of entering the Carter family. The ex, a shadow that never left at. A few weeks after that meeting, Daniel took me to a party hosted by his family. That's when I first met Rebecca, his ex-girlfriend. Rebecca didn't come alone. She came with Daniel's mother. They walked arm in arm, laughing like real mother and daughter. Someone whispered to me that Rebecca had once been matched by Veronica, and if Daniel hadn't gone overseas for work 2 years ago, they might have already been married. I stood there, holding a glass of wine, trying to stay calm while Daniel stiffened beside me. But what made me shiver was the way Veronica looked at me, as if to say, that girl is the one I chose. I got pregnant and thought it was a miracle scene. 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. I trembled holding the pregnancy test. I was scared, but also overjoyed. We weren't married yet, hadn't planned anything. But deep in my heart, this child was a gift from heaven. I told Daniel one evening during a light rain. He was silent for a long time. Then he hugged me tightly. "I'm here. We'll be okay. I promise." I believed him, believed he would protect me and our child. But I was wrong. The first slap of life, not by hand, but by words. 3 days after he found out, I was invited to the Carter house for a talk. Daniel said, "Mom just wants to see you alone for a bit. Don't worry." I walked into the vast mansion, heart pounding but still thinking, they just needed time to accept it. Veronica sat at the head of the table, a glass of wine in hand, eyes coldly staring at me. "Who do you think you are, keeping that baby?" she said bluntly. I was speechless. "That's your grandchild," I choked out. "No, that's a burden to my family." I wanted to get up and leave, but my legs wouldn't move. "You have two choices. 1, get an abortion and continue to marry Daniel. 2, keep it and walk out of his life forever. I'll make sure my family has no ties to you, not even the baby." I looked at Daniel and wished I hadn't. I went home and waited for Daniel. I asked him, "You knew about this, didn't you?" He was silent. Then he spoke like reading a sentence. "Mom's just thinking about our future. She doesn't want things to get messy." I broke down crying. "You want me to abort it too?" Daniel didn't answer. He just quietly stepped onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. He never smoked, unless he was under unbearable pressure. I looked at the man I loved and realized he was no longer on my side. That night, I held my belly, whispering to the child whose face hadn't even formed, "I'm sorry, but I won't give you up. Even if the whole world turns its back, I'll choose to keep you." I knew that decision would cost me everything: love, family, reputation, my entire future. But there's one thing they didn't know. I could lose everything, but I would never forgive. And the day I stand at the top will be the day they bow their heads before the child they once tried to erase from existence. I left Daniel's house that night under the freezing December rain. No suitcase, no coat, just two trembling hands and a tiny life growing inside me. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see that house, once filled with laughter, now just a ghost of coldness and betrayal. I took a cab back to the small apartment I used to rent before moving in with Daniel. The gray walls, the old kitchen, the musty smell, but at least there, no one forced me to choose between love and an innocent child. I sat on the floor, arms around my belly. The baby had no shape yet, but in my heart, it was already my whole world. I sent one last message to Daniel: I'm keeping the baby. Don't look for me again. The message was read but unanswered. I turned off my phone, locked the door, and stepped into a solitary life. Being pregnant alone isn't like in books or movies. No one rubs your belly and says, the baby will be as beautiful as you. No one goes to prenatal visits with you. No one comforts you when you're nauseous, dizzy, or crying on the floor from exhaustion. I did everything alone. I quit my old job because I couldn't face the colleagues who had once heard me brag about the fall wedding with Daniel. I switched to freelance content writing for websites. Meager income, but enough to survive and pay for prenatal checkups. I ate more instant noodles than vegetables. I slept restlessly. I feared every mild stomach ache, afraid I wouldn't be strong enough to carry the baby. I missed my sister, Hazel. She used to be the closest to me, but I didn't dare tell her. I feared my family would be disappointed. I feared my mother, a strict woman, would call me a stupid girl blinded by love. So I chose silence. Until the 12th week, when I heard my baby's heartbeat for the first time through the ultrasound screen, I cried like a child. The doctor placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled. The baby is strong, a little fighter, and I think the mom is too. That was the first time I was called Mom. I didn't think I'd become a topic at cocktail parties of the wealthy, but I was wrong. 2 months after leaving Daniel, my friend, Kelly, sent me a screenshot from Instagram. It was a photo of Daniel holding hands with Rebecca. Below it was the caption, "Second chances are worth it." Below that were dozens of congratulatory comments from names I used to know. Some I had dinner with, shared my love story with Daniel. No one asked, "Where's Maya?" No one mentioned me, the former fiancé, the one 6 weeks pregnant when erased from their lives. I realized I wasn't just abandoned. I was erased. I thought they'd leave me alone, but I was wrong. At 18 weeks pregnant, I received a letter from the Carter family's lawyer. They asked me to sign a legal release, declaring I voluntarily left Daniel and that the baby has no legal connection to the Carter family. I felt a stab with every word. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted my unborn child erased from their family records. I refused to sign. Their lawyer messaged, "If you don't sign, we will sue, and there will be no financial support from the Carter family for you later." I didn't respond. I called a lawyer I knew, someone who once helped a single mother win custody. He said, "This is typical behavior from wealthy families trying to protect their reputation. But if you're willing to fight, I'll stand by you." And I agreed. Not because I needed their money, but because the child inside me deserved to know they were not a mistake. I gave birth on a rainy night. No one drove me to the hospital. I called a cab myself, signed the forms myself, and when the contractions came, I screamed in the delivery room, alone, with only unfamiliar nurses around me. I gave birth to a baby girl. I named her Luna, because she came at the darkest night of my life, yet shone brightest in my heart. When the nurse placed her in my arms, my eyes blurred with tears. I whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever had. I'm sorry the world wasn't kind to you even before you were born." 3 days after giving birth, I got a message from Hazel, my sister. "Where are you? I heard you had a baby?" I burst into tears. Hazel came to the hospital that afternoon, bringing a bouquet of sunflowers and teary eyes. She hugged me tightly, gently kissed Luna's forehead. She whispered, "I don't need to know what happened, but you're not alone anymore." Then my mother came. She said nothing, just stared at me for a long time. Then she came closer, held my hand, for the first time in years and cried. She said, "You're my daughter. I'm sorry I didn't ask, didn't call, didn't hold you when you needed it the most." I cried like a child. I thought I lost everything, but in the darkest moments, I found small lights: my daughter's love, my sister and mother's return, and a strength I never knew I had. I returned to writing, this time under a pen name, sharing my story on a single mom's forum. The story went viral. Thousands of messages came to me, from women once forced to abort, once abandoned for being pregnant out of wedlock, once betrayed by those they trusted. I was no longer alone. I was part of a wave of women who survived and became stronger through heartbreak. 3 months postpartum, I published a short memoir titled Holding the Moonlight, A Letter to Luna, and it hit Amazon's top 10 in the memoir category. When Luna was nearly 1, I accidentally ran into Daniel at a charity conference, where I was invited to speak as an inspiring mother. He was with Rebecca, and his mother, Veronica. I walked on stage, in a white dress and with confident eyes. I said, 3 years ago, I was told that if I kept my child, I'd have no future. But now, my child is my future. And I know no one has the right to decide what's right, except a mother's heart. The hall erupted in applause. I stepped down, carrying Luna past the 3 people who once wanted to erase her existence. I didn't expect a small talk at a single mother's conference to become the start of the biggest storm of my life. I never thought a single talk at a single mother's conference could stir such a powerful wave. A week later, while preparing to take Luna to daycare, I received a thick parcel. It clearly stated court summons. I opened it. My heart pounded. Plaintiffs Daniel Carter and Veronica Carter. Defendant Maya Thompson. Charges: defamation, slander, and intentional infliction of reputational harm. I froze. They sued me. They actually sued me. I called John, the old lawyer who had helped me start over when I first separated. "John, they're suing me because of the speech. They said I lied." There was the sound of papers being flipped. Then John sighed over the phone. "Maya, I'll come over right away. We need to have a serious talk." That day in my living room, John sat across from me, laying files out on the table. They're demanding $100,000 in damages for defamation, a public apology on social media, and various media outlets. On top of that, they want you to take down every video mentioning the name Carter. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. I didn't name anyone. I talked about my life, about how they treated me. What are they so afraid of? The truth. John looked at me slowly. "Maya, what we're facing isn't just a lawsuit. This is a battle of reputation, power, and money. They're trying to silence you. They want to send a message. You're small. Stay quiet, or you'll be crushed." I looked at the photo of Luna on the wall, clenched my fist. I've been silent for years, John. Silent when they kicked me out while I was pregnant. Silent when Daniel never came to see his child. I have nothing left to lose. We'll counterclaim. John nodded. His eyes were serious for the first time. Then we strike back. First, I'll file for a DNA test. If Daniel is the biological father, he can't just walk away. Second, we'll petition for full custody of Luna. 2 days later, at the Carter's lawyer's office, a meeting was arranged before taking the counterclaim to court. Daniel walked in, face cold. Beside him was Veronica. She wore an expensive beige suit, held a Hermes purse, and her eyes were daggers pointed at me. Rebecca didn't show up. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was raging. Daniel looked at me, his voice low and icy. "Maya, do you really want to take this to court? Over a cheap online speech?" I replied, not breaking eye contact. "Because my daughter deserves to know the truth, and I deserve to live as a human being, not as a discarded shadow." Veronica cut in, her voice sharp. "We warned you from the beginning, Maya. You chose to leave this family. Don't blame anyone else." I looked at her, holding back my anger. "You kicked me out in the rain when I was 3 months pregnant. Not a word of concern, not a single dollar. You call that a warning?" Daniel shrugged. "You signed the agreement to leave without asking for anything. You walked away voluntarily." I laughed bitterly. Voluntarily? Where was I supposed to live back then, Daniel? My belly was growing. I had no job, no shelter. I signed that agreement because I had no other choice. John placed the counterclaim files on the table. "We will request a reassessment of the conditions under which the agreement was signed. Ms. Thompson was in a vulnerable state and under psychological pressure, and we have proof." After a while, Daniel looked at me, voice lowering. Maya, I don't want this to blow up, but you're dragging my wife, Rebecca, into pain over one speech. You're tearing apart our family. I stood up. I didn't destroy anything. You all did when you cast me into the shadows. I'm not tearing apart your family. I'm protecting mine, me and my daughter. After that meeting, I called Rebecca, not because I forgave her, but because I needed to understand. I didn't know they were suing you. I swear, Maya. Rebecca said on the phone, her voice panicked. I stayed silent. She continued, trembling. I didn't know Daniel and his mom would go this far. I just wanted everything to be peaceful. Peaceful for who, Rebecca? For me or for your family that you're protecting by stepping on me? I asked. Rebecca choked back a sob. I hung up. There was no room left in me for pity. After the tense lawyer meeting, I couldn't sleep for nights. Old memories I thought were buried kept returning, especially the look in Rebecca's eyes the last time I saw her before being thrown out of that house. Flashback. The rainy night. I stood shivering in front of the Carter's mansion, holding a small suitcase and 3 months pregnant. The rain was icy cold. A dull pain in my lower belly almost made me collapse. Rebecca opened the door. She wore a red silk robe, hair down, a glass of wine in her hand. Oh, you came back? She smirked. I pleaded, I just need a few days. I have nowhere else to go. Rebecca leaned on the doorframe, slowly sipping her wine. You were the one who left, remember? So proud, so confident, walking away from Daniel, from everything. And now you're crawling back? I looked at her, voice breaking. I'm pregnant. It's Daniel's baby. Rebecca, you were my best friend. Please. Rebecca's face darkened. She set her wine glass down, lowered her voice to a whisper. Best friend? Maya, you're so delusional. You think I didn't know Daniel used to text me while he was still with you? Or that night after your birthday party when you passed out and he walked into my room? I was stunned. My heart felt like it was being crushed. You're lying? I'm telling the truth. Rebecca whispered, stepping closer. He stayed with you out of duty. He came to me for love. Keep the baby, but don't expect to get anything else. Then she slammed the door shut. Present. Scars that won't heal. I sat on the sofa, gripping a cup of cold tea. John, the lawyer, sat across from me, silent. Then he asked, Rebecca was your old friend? I nodded slowly. The one who watched me grow up, the one I trusted. Enough to introduce her to Daniel. John frowned. Then she betrayed you on 2 fronts, as a friend and as a fellow woman. I sneered. She didn't come from the darkness, John. She is the darkness. But what's scarier is that Daniel chose to drown in it. That night, as I was putting Luna to sleep, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A strange woman's voice came through. You're playing with fire, Maya. Step back before little Luna gets dragged in. I was stunned. Who is this? Who are you? Rebecca didn't lose. She just doesn't like being exposed. Stop before things get out of control. I screamed, don't ever call again. But the line had already gone dead. The next morning, Rebecca showed up. Rebecca came to my house. This time, no glamorous dresses. She wore a black suit, hair tied neatly, eyes sharp as razors. I'm here to settle this privately. Not for you, but for Daniel. He's tired of this court drama. I blocked the door. Drama? You think this is a game, Rebecca? What about me? What about my daughter? Rebecca frowned. What does your daughter have to do with this? You're using the kid to get sympathy. We just want peace. Spare us your noble pain. I stepped forward, looked her straight in the eye. I once chose silence. I once gave you a chance to walk away. But now, if I have to, I'll tear off that fake mask you're wearing, right in court. Rebecca paused for a second. Then she smirked. You won't win. I know the law better than you, and I have Daniel. And I have the truth, I replied. She turned away, leaving behind a look full of hatred. I looked at Luna, fast asleep, and silently promised, my daughter, I was once swallowed by darkness, but this time I will walk through it. Not for me, for you. The first day in court. I wore an old black coat, hands trembling as I entered the courtroom. Daniel sat on the other side in a sharp suit, expressionless. Beside him was Rebecca, radiant like a Hollywood star, wearing a gleaming wedding ring. The trial began, a public battle. Daniel's lawyer, a cold, balding man, stood up. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Daniel Carter, is a devoted father who has consistently provided financial support for his daughter. We have evidence that Miss Maya Thompson deliberately restricted visitation rights and negatively influenced the child's mental state. I clenched my fists, burning with the urge to stand up and protest. But John, the only person who still believed in me, held me back. He whispered, "Let them talk first. We have a plan." They played a video. I was crying, screaming in the bedroom while Luna wailed in her crib. Rebecca coldly said, "I came by to visit my niece, but found Maya mentally unstable. This clearly proves she's unfit to raise a child." I jumped up. "You cut out the beginning. I had a high fever and no help." She snuck in and secretly filmed me, then twisted it into this. The judge banged the gavel. "Order in the court." I looked at Daniel, hoping for a trace of conscience, a look of understanding, but he stared straight ahead, cold, as stone. In the plaintiff's lounge, I sat, heavy-hearted. Rebecca suddenly walked in. She locked the door. "You think you'll win?" Rebecca sneered. "The court likes evidence, not tears." I turned, voice hoarse. "What do you want, Rebecca? Isn't it enough? Now you want to take my daughter too?" Rebecca stepped closer, whispered, "I don't need the kid. I need to win, because only if you lose, Daniel won't be seen as the man who abandoned his child for another woman." I froze. "You're covering for him? Do you two really believe that money and lies can wipe away all your sins?" Rebecca leaned close to my ear. "Justice doesn't lie in the truth, Maya. It lies in the hands of those who know how to spin it." John looked at me as we returned to the courtroom. "It's time." He presented an audio recording, the anonymous call I received days earlier, extracted from my phone's auto-record. A woman's voice rang out. "You're playing with fire, Maya. Stop before the child gets dragged in." The judge frowned. John continued, "We verified. This call came from a number registered under Rebecca, Daniel Carter's fiancée. This is an act of intimidation." The courtroom tensed like a drawn wire. For the first time, Daniel turned to Rebecca, his face starting to pale. John didn't stop. He pulled out a series of messages, screenshots from Daniel's phone, sent to me by a former housemaid. Messages from when I was pregnant, where Daniel wrote to Rebecca, "If she leaves, it'll be easier to handle. I'll give her some money and cut her off." "What about the child?" Rebecca asked. "I don't care. A kid isn't worth sacrificing my whole life." I burst into tears. The courtroom fell silent. The judge spoke gravely. "We'll need to verify authenticity, but if true, this proves Daniel Carter intentionally abandoned his paternal responsibilities." Daniel stood up. "That's not the whole conversation. I was just angry at the time." Rebecca stood frozen, for the first time, scared. I walked out of the courtroom, John following behind. "You haven't won yet," he said, "but at least today you showed them justice doesn't belong to traitors." I nodded, looking up at the gray sky. "I don't need to win with money. I just need my daughter to know her mother never gave up." The first trial ended in breathless tension. I didn't win, but at least I wasn't defeated. The court was adjourned to investigate the recordings and evidence from both sides. I went home, hugging Luna tightly. She slept peacefully, her tiny hands unconsciously gripping my finger, as if trying to keep her mother forever. And at that very moment, I knew I couldn't stop. 2 days later, I received a strange call. It was Daniel. "Maya, I want to meet you. Just the two of us." I paused for a few seconds before answering, "If it's about negotiating custody, talk to my lawyer." "No, it's something else." I went to a small riverside cafe, once a sweet memory of ours. Now it had become a hidden battlefield. Daniel sat there looking more tired and burdened than ever. "I'm sorry." I nearly laughed aloud. He bowed his head. "I know. Things have gone too far. Rebecca may have done things I couldn't control." "You knew she secretly filmed me, didn't you?" I asked, staring straight at him. Silence. I clenched my fist, my voice tight. "Then why did you let her stand beside you in court, lie about my mental state, smear me before the judge?" Daniel looked at me, eyes red, "Because I was afraid of losing everything. Rebecca has what I need: reputation, connections, money. And what do I have?" I hissed. "A child? A truth no one wants to hear?" He sighed, then opened a document folder. "I have a proposal. You drop the lawsuit. In return, I won't fight for custody. I'll provide full support, even double. But you can't mention Rebecca, the trial, or any of the evidence again." I took the agreement. My eyes scanned each line. Money, a lot of it, and a promise to stay out of my life. It meant I could live peacefully, raise my child alone without anyone trying to take her. No more confrontation. No more court. No more enduring one more day of Rebecca's fake face or Daniel's lies. But in return, I had to be silent. Silent like a loser. I quietly asked, "Do you ever feel regret when you watch her grow up knowing you were never worthy of being her father?" Daniel looked up, said nothing. I stood up, crushed the contract. I choose the truth. Even if it costs me everything, at least my daughter will know her mother didn't bow down to lies. The courtroom was packed that day. The media crowded outside the courthouse. The trial was closed to the public, but the name Maya Thompson had become a hot keyword on every news outlet. A custody battle between a woman once diagnosed with severe depression and one of California's most prestigious families, the Carters. I sat on the plaintiff's side, eyes fixed straight ahead, where Daniel and Rebecca sat like the perfect couple. And on the defendant's side sat Daniel and Rebecca, looking like the perfect pair, alongside another woman, Veronica Carter, Daniel's biological mother. My lawyer, Mr. John, approached the stand with new evidence. We have traced 3 suspicious transactions from the defendant Rebecca's company account, transferred to an account under the name of a relative of Judge Morton. The courtroom fell silent. In addition, we have a verified recording of a phone call between the defendant and this judge, in which they mention securing a favorable outcome if the donation remains discreet. The new judge, a neutral party, banged the gavel. The court requests the defendant respond to these allegations. Rebecca's attorney tried to dismiss it, calling it an investment transaction, but both the prosecutors and my own eyes were ice cold. I stood up, voice clear. A mother diagnosed with depression like me can't afford to buy justice, but it seems in their world, justice is just a product for sale at the right price. Daniel shouted, "Maya, you're exaggerating. You think I just stand by while our child is handed to someone unstable?" I turned to him, voice cold. "No, you're not standing by. You're standing with them, and you let the woman next to you do the dirty work for you." Rebecca snapped, "I only did what's best for the child. She needs a real family, not a mother who's always drowning in pills and tears." I stepped forward, eyes blazing. "She doesn't need a family of liars who shove money into Justice's mouth." Suddenly, Veronica Carter stood up, slowly but with undeniable authority. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak as the child's future grandmother." The judge nodded. "I have remained silent because I believed in the legal system, but I cannot sit here and watch a fragile woman with no status, no family background, smear justice with baseless accusations." I clenched my fist so tightly my nails dug into my skin. My son Daniel deserves custody. And Miss Rebecca, though not yet officially my daughter-in-law, has the qualities to be a mother. We are the Carters. We do not buy justice. We choose the justice that aligns with truth. Attorney John spoke up, unwavering. "Mrs. Carter, are you aware your future daughter-in-law hired a private investigator to surveil the plaintiff? Are you aware she installed hidden cameras in someone else's home? Is that the motherly quality you refer to?" I stood up. Facing Veronica Carter, the woman whose word could bankrupt any business, I stood tall. "I may not bear the Carter name. I may not ride in polished cars or wear real diamonds, but I have something your family lost long ago: unconditional love." My voice cracked. "And if my daughter grows up without me, she will grow up in a world where the powerful don't need to be right, only rich enough." The judge declared, "The court will recess for deliberation. A verdict will be delivered in 48 hours." I walked out of the courtroom, feeling like I had just survived a storm. But for the first time, I knew I wasn't alone, because I had something no one could buy: belief in the truth. 2 days after the trial, I stood in front of the courthouse once again. The sky was gloomy. Everything felt frozen. Beside me was lawyer John, the one who had fought with me not just as a legal representative, but like a family member. The courtroom doors opened. I stepped in, facing those all too familiar eyes: Daniel, Rebecca, and at the end of the bench was Veronica Carter, still carrying that cold, royal demeanor, holding a cup of coffee, expressionless. The judge stood up, voice calm. "After reviewing the evidence, testimonies, and the current mental health condition of the plaintiff, the court declares The temporary custody of the child shall be granted to the biological mother, Maya Thompson, under periodic supervision by a social worker for 6 months. My entire body went numb. The judge continued. The court will also reopen the investigation regarding unusual financial transactions related to the parties involved in this case. I couldn't react. Tears silently streamed down like a flood that had been held back for too long. Rebecca jumped up. No, this is a mistake. Someone who once tried to commit suicide gets to raise a child? How could you? Daniel clenched his fists but said nothing. He just lowered his head as if avoiding something. And Veronica, she simply curled her lips, stood up, and slowly said, "This isn't the end, Miss Maya, but I'll remember your face." I left the courtroom in silence. The press swarmed outside, but I didn't care. There was only one thing on my mind. I would get to bring my daughter home, not as a failed woman, but as her mother. Suddenly, Daniel ran after me. "Daniel, Maya, wait. I just want to say, I know I left you alone for too long. Maybe I don't deserve to be a father. But I still want to see my daughter. Not as someone who lost a case, but as a real dad." I turned back, looking him in the eyes for the first time in months. "Maya, do you know what hurt me the most? Not the betrayal, not the court, but the fact that I loved you so much, I believed that holding on to a family meant holding on to happiness. I was wrong. I have nothing left to justify. But if one day you find your heart wide enough, please give me a chance to be with her as a friend. Not because you forgive me, but because she deserves a father." I remained silent, no nodding, no shaking, just turned away. 3 years have passed since I walked out of that courtroom with trembling hands but a resilient heart. Now I live in Portland, Oregon, a place not too noisy but quiet enough for me to hear myself. I rent a small apartment near my daughter's preschool, Luna. She's now over 4 years old. She has my eyes, but her gaze carries a strange resilience, as if she has seen too much in her early years. Every morning, I take Luna to school, then head to work at an interior design studio I co-founded with John, the former lawyer, now best friend. The job doesn't make me rich, but it's enough to keep me grounded without depending on anyone. One late afternoon, while I was tidying up the office, someone knocked on the door. I opened it and froze. Daniel. 3 years without seeing him. He looked the same, but there was weariness in his eyes. No more expensive suits, no more cold demeanor. "Daniel, I know. I shouldn't have come. But today is Luna's birthday. I just wanted to give her a present. Nothing big, just a teddy bear and a letter." I stayed silent, unsure whether to be angry or smile. "Maya, where are you living now?" "San Diego. I changed jobs, left my mom's company. Not really in contact with her anymore." I was surprised. "Veronica? The woman who once declared there's no room for weakness in the Carter family?" "Daniel, I know I was a coward. But after everything, the only thing I care about is whether Luna is happy." "Maya, she's fine. She laughs a lot. She draws pictures with suns as big as the whole page. She's afraid of the dark, but believes that mommy can chase all the monsters away." A pause. "If one day you allow it, can I take her out for a day?" I looked at him, then looked down at the gift he held. "I'm not promising anything, but you can leave the gift here." A week later, Luna opened the gift. She giggled. "This bear looks like me, Mommy. It has curly hair, too." I asked, "Do you want to meet the person who gave you the bear?" She nodded. Her eyes sparkled like sunshine. Not because of Daniel, but because Luna deserves the chance to decide her own emotional future, something I never had. I sat down and wrote a letter to myself, like a ritual to close an old chapter. "Dear Maya, 3 years ago you rose from the ashes. Now you are living, truly living. You don't need anyone to prove you right. You don't need anyone to validate your strength, because your existence and your daughter's smile are already the most beautiful affirmation." One early summer day, I took Luna on a picnic by the Riverside Park. She drew on paper a house, a mother, a child, and a man standing far away. "Luna, Mommy, who's that man? Why does he look sad?" I looked at the drawing and smiled. Maybe he's someone trying to find himself again. Luna hugged me tightly. I don't know what the future holds. Whether Daniel will truly change, whether Veronica will return with new storms. But there is one thing I'm sure of. We will never walk the same broken path again. But we also won't shut the door completely on the future. Because true happiness doesn't come from holding on or seeking revenge. It comes from letting go at the right time, in the right way, with the right person.